Thank you for tuning in to Terry Swoop Videos. On today's video, I'm going to talk about the late great R&B singer Chris Bender. Chris Bender was part of the New Jack Swing of R&B that came out in the late 80s, early 90s. You had groups like Guy, Tony. They paved the way for the New Jack Swing era. And he was part of that era. And I thought he was a really great young singer. He had his whole life ahead of him. And he lost his life at 19 years old. He was only 19 years old when he passed away. Now, he got his first record deal in 1989 with Epic Records. And when he released his first album, he released the single Baby Girl. And his manager said they recorded a music video for this song, but the company didn't release the music video. So the Epic Records didn't do a good job of promoting his music with his first album. And he didn't have a lot of success with his first album. Even though I heard his first album and it sounds great.
Baby girl, around my world. Tell me, girl, do you wanna be mine?
He was upset with the way Epic Records promoted his music. So he signed a record deal with East West Records. And they gave him a $500,000 record deal. And that was a lot of money back then for an up-and-coming artist. And he releases the song I Knew. And this was a hit on R&B charts. It made the top 40 on R&B charts. And this is what made him a star.
When we're hanging out at my place, I always find them staring in your face. Anywhere you go, everything you do, when I turn my back, they try to compensate with you. Yeah, it all started. I often wonder what the world started. Always looking deep into your eyes. Sorry, that's what the girl is mine. I heard now. My friends wanted you to just like I do. Oh, I do. Yeah, you. My friends wanted you to just like I do.
Chris Bender's second single off of his second album, Draped, in 1991, was also a hit. His second single was Who Will I Choose? This was a hit song on R&B charts, even though he didn't make a music video for the song. This is probably the song that he's most remembered for because it got a lot of radio airplay. Who Will I Choose is a slow jam. It has a nice, smooth R&B feel to it. And I was only 10 years old when this song came out. But I used to play this song all the time. This was my favorite song as a kid.
I have a problem that concerns two ladies. I feel for the both of them, and it's driving me
On November the 3rd, 1991, in Brookton, Massachusetts, Chris Bender was sitting in a car with his cousin. His cousin was 17 years old and Chris was 19 years old. And they were just sitting in the car smoking weed. And three men walked up to the car and started shooting. And Chris put himself in front of the gunfire in order to save his cousin's life. His cousin was only 17 years old. And he jumped in front of the bullets to save his cousin. And his cousin didn't get hit at all. But Chris Bender got shot 4 times in the back and twice in his shoulder. They rushed him to the hospital, and he was able to hold on for about 5 days after the shooting. He was on life support for 5 days, and he ended up passing away on November 9th, 1991. And he was only 19 years old. This young man had his whole life ahead of him. He was so talented. And I was a huge fan of his music. And it's always sad to see a young, talented, young black man lose his life over nothing. The 3 men that shot him, they were trying to rob him. And he was sitting in a Mercedes Benz, so it was kind of an easy target. Sitting in the hood and sitting in the Mercedes Benz, you're a target. And this is the problem I have with a lot of this violence, the violence in the black community. And every time I speak against the violence in the black community, I'm always called a coon or a sellout, because a lot of these woke activists believe you should only address a black person's death unless the police do the killing. And they want to completely ignore black people killing other black people. And that makes no sense to me. I believe every black life matters, regardless of who the killer is. And I get sick and tired of us as black people completely ignoring the violence in our own community. Now, violence back in the 1990s was worse than it is now. It's bad now, but back in the early 90s, I mean, the murders back then were huge. It was out of control back then. The Bloods and Crips were killing each other like flies. Now, Chris Bender was never involved in any gang violence. I think he was killed because of his success. He was sitting in a fancy car in the ghetto, and they saw him and they wanted to rob him. That's why he was killed. And I think that's another problem in the black community. Every time we see a young black man being successful, we want to rob him and bring him down. This is the problem with the crabs in the barrel mentality. Every time a young black male becomes successful and you see him driving a fancy car, the first thing a lot of these ratchets want to do is rob him and take what he has. This needs to stop. It went on back then and it's still going on right now. So I think we need to wake up as black Americans and stop killing each other and start valuing all black lives. Not just the black lives that are killed by the police. We need to start valuing all black lives, especially the ones that are talented in doing something with their life. I see so many talented young black males losing their life from gun violence. It happens all the time. And I'm sick and tired of it. I've had several family members that have died from black on black crime. And every time I speak against black on black crime, these so-called woke activists want to call me a coon. They want to call me a sellout for speaking against violence in our own community. I just think the ignorance needs to stop. If you really care about black lives, then we should address all black lives that are lost, not just the ones that are killed by the police. So we need to stop being hypocrites. A lot of these black activists need to stop being hypocrites because they only want to address a black person's death when the killer is a cop. But when a black person kills another black person, they want to completely ignore it and shove it under the rug. and call anybody a sellout who talks about the problem of inner city violence and gang violence in the black community. I just think the nonsense needs to stop. The hypocrisy needs to stop. A lot of people have different opinions about this topic. Leave a comment, rate, and subscribe.